African cultures, death is not seen as the end of existence, but as a transition, a journey from the physical world to a spiritual realm. From the royal burial rites of ancient Egypt to the vibrant ceremonies of the Yoruba in Nigeria, death rituals serve as important rites of passage. These rituals guide the soul of the departed on its journey and reinforce the spiritual connections between the living and the dead. But what exactly happens when someone dies in these diverse African cultures? How do communities ensure that the soul of the departed is properly guided into the afterlife? How do these rituals affect the living? Across the African continent, the relationship between the living and the deceased is not only one of remembrance, but also of continued interaction, guidance, and protection. In this video, we'll explore the death rituals, burial practices, and beliefs about the afterlife from different African cultures. We will examine practices from Nigeria, Egypt, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Seychelles, Cameroon, and Kenya, unraveling the complex and fascinating customs that connect death to life in these cultures. Death and afterlife in Nigeria. In Nigeria, death is viewed as a transition from the world of the living to the realm of the ancestors. The Nigerian cultural landscape is vast, with the Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa people each having their own rich traditions and beliefs surrounding death. Igbo burial and this. The Igbo people, for example, believe that death is not the end, but rather the beginning of the journey back to the ancestors. They practice elaborate burial rites to ensure the safe passage of the soul to the spirit world. The Igbo burial often includes feasts, drum dances, and the offering of food, which symbolize the celebration of the person's life and the ensuring of a safe journey to the afterlife. The body is typically dressed in white cloth, the color symbolizing purity, and the deceased is given a new name by the elders before the burial. These rites serve as a way to honor the deceased while also allowing the living to seek spiritual guidance from the departed. Yoruba afterlife beliefs. For the Yoruba people, death is viewed as the return of the individual to the Orishas, the deities of the Yoruba spiritual pantheon. The Yoruba perform specific rituals to ensure that the departed are properly honored and can be reincarnated in the spiritual world. The family prepares a spiritual feast and makes offerings of food, wine, and coins to attract the attention of the gods and the ancestors. The Yoruba people believe that death is merely a transformation, and the deceased are still capable of interacting with the living. Ancestral reverence is incredibly important to Yoruba culture, and those who pass away are viewed as continuing to offer spiritual support and protection to their family members. Hausa death rituals. In the Hausa tradition, influenced by Islam, death rituals focus heavily on prayers for the soul. Upon death, the deceased is washed, wrapped in white cloth, and prayers are recited over the body. The Hausa believe that upon death, the soul enters the realm of the dead where it is judged. Funeral prayers are held, and a special prayer is said to ensure the soul's peaceful journey into the afterlife. The Hausa believe in a form of divine judgment, ensuring the soul's final resting place in paradise. Death and afterlife in Egypt. Egypt, one of the oldest civilizations in Africa, has one of the most elaborate and ritualistic traditions surrounding death. From the grand pyramids of Giza to the sacred tombs of pharaohs, death was viewed as a transition to the afterlife, and the mummification process was a key aspect of this journey. Mummification process. Ancient Egyptians believed that to ensure the soul's eternal life, the body needed to be preserved. The mummification process was a sacred ritual that involved removing the internal organs, embalming the body with resins, and wrapping the body in linen cloth. The idea was that the body, as it was preserved, would house the soul for eternity, keeping it connected to the living world. Mummification was typically reserved for the wealthy or important members of society, such as pharaohs, who were buried with treasures, food, and personal items to accompany them into the afterlife. The journey to the afterlife. The Egyptians believed that the soul would journey through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, where it would be judged by Osiris, the god of the afterlife. If the soul's deeds in life were judged to be worthy, it would be granted access to the field of reeds, a paradisiacal afterlife where the soul could live in peace for eternity. The soul's journey was often assisted by spells and rituals from the Book of the Dead, a sacred text that guided the soul through the trials of the afterlife. Funeral offerings and rituals. During the funeral, offerings were made to the gods to ensure the deceased's smooth journey. Grain, fruits, incense, and sacred prayers were presented to appease the gods and provide for the soul's needs in the afterlife. The ancient Egyptians saw the afterlife as a continuation of life, only in a spiritual form. Death and afterlife in Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, death is deeply tied to ancestral worship and spiritual continuity. Traditional beliefs about the afterlife emphasize the connection between the living and the ancestors. Key rituals, Shona burial customs. The Shona people believe that the dead become ancestors who offer protection and guidance. The deceased are buried with personal items, and rituals are performed to ensure peace for the spirit. Great Zimbabwe ruins. The Great Zimbabwe ruins are considered sacred, with ancestral spirits believed to reside within them. These ceremonial sites are visited during times of mourning. As rituals performed, they are believed to guide the soul to the next realm. Divine guidance for the dead. Spirit mediums play an essential role in Zimbabwean death rituals, acting as intermediaries between the living and the deceased. These mediums invoke the ancestors to guide the soul to the afterlife and ensure prosperity for the living. Cultural significance. Death rituals in Zimbabwe emphasize the spiritual continuity between the living and the dead. The ancestors' wisdom is highly valued, and the deceased are regarded as active guides, influencing the living's daily decisions, especially regarding community well-being and prosperity. Death and afterlife in South Africa. South African death rituals reflect the diverse range of cultures and spiritual beliefs across the country. From Zulu beliefs and ancestral guidance to Xhosa traditions, death is viewed as an ongoing relationship with the spirit world. Key rituals, Zulu ancestral worship. The Zulu people place great emphasis on the power of ancestors to guide the living. Sacrificial offerings of cattle or goats are made to honor the Amadlozi ancestral spirits and ensure a safe journey for the soul into the afterlife. Xhosa funerary practices. The Xhosa practice ritual burials, where the deceased are prepared through ritual washing and are buried in sacred places. The Xhosa believe the spirit of the deceased becomes one of the ancestors, continuing to influence the living. Funeral feasts and dances. In many South African cultures, the funeral is a community event, with dances, drumming, and feasts to celebrate the deceased's life and to invite the ancestors' blessing. Cultural significance. Death is considered not an end, but a continuation of the ancestral journey. The practice of honoring the deceased with rituals and offerings ensures the spiritual connection remains intact, as ancestors are seen as eternal protectors and guides. Death and afterlife in Seychelles. In Seychelles, the island's unique blend of African, European, and Asian influences shapes its death rituals. The spiritual practices around death focus on ancestral reverence, rituals of mourning, and the belief in the afterlife. Key rituals, burial and mourning customs. Seychellois people bury their deceased with ritual prayers, offerings of food, and flowers to honor the spirits. Funerals are communal, with family gatherings that focus on the journey of the soul. Ancestor worship. Similar to other African cultures, Seychellois people believe that the deceased become ancestors who offer protection. The spirits of the dead are believed to reside in sacred places, and offerings are made at these sites to maintain their favor. Cultural fusion of death rituals. The mixture of different cultural influences in Seychelles results in unique rituals that involve prayers, sacrificial offerings, and a focus on the continuity of life. Cultural significance. Death in Seychelles is seen as a gateway to an eternal bond with ancestors. The rituals are a way to maintain the continuity of spiritual wisdom and community connections which transcends the physical world. Death and afterlife in Cameroon. In Cameroon, Death is considered a transition, and the afterlife is tied to ancestral worship, with the dead believed to live on as protectors and guides. Rituals differ from tribe to tribe but emphasize ancestral connection and the spirit's role in influencing the living. Key rituals: Fang and Beiti funerary practices. The Fang, people honor the dead through elaborate ceremonies and spiritual offerings. Cattle and sacred herbs are often sacrificed to appease the spirits of the deceased. Baka and the forest spirits. The Baka people believe that the forest spirits guide the dead. Their death rituals involve drumming, songs, and offerings made in the forest to ensure that the spirits of the dead find their way to the afterlife. The role of diviners. In some regions of Cameroon, diviners act as spiritual leaders to guide the deceased spirit. Through rituals and prayers, diviners ensure that the soul transitions to the next life safely. Cultural significance. Death rituals in Cameroon emphasize the eternal relationship between the living and the deceased. Ancestral worship and the belief in spiritual protection from ancestors permeate daily life, reflecting the continuous influence of the departed on the living. Death and afterlife in Kenya. In Kenya, beliefs about death and the afterlife vary across its many ethnic groups, but there is a common theme of ancestral worship and the spiritual journey of the deceased. Key rituals. Maasai death rituals. The Maasai people perform ritual sacrifices, offering cattle to the ancestors as a way of guiding the soul into the afterlife. Rituals are also focused on purification to ensure the soul's safe journey. Kikuyu afterlife beliefs. The Kikuyu people believe in the immortality of the soul and practice ritual cleansing of the body before burial. The deceased are believed to join their ancestors, influencing future generations. Funeral feasts and celebrations. Kenyan death rituals are often characterized by feasts, singing and dancing, celebrating the life of the departed while maintaining a spiritual connection. Cultural significance. In Kenya, death is seen as a continuation of the soul's journey, and rituals are performed to ensure that the deceased have a smooth transition into the afterlife and continue to protect their descendants. Conclusion. Across Africa, death is not seen as the end, but as the beginning of a spiritual journey. From the elaborate burial rites of Egypt to the vibrant and communal celebrations in Kenya, African cultures believe that the dead continue to influence the living, offering guidance, protection, and prosperity. These diverse rituals showcase the deep reverence Africans have for their ancestors and their belief in the continuity of life beyond death. The practices we explored serve as a reminder that the bond between the living and the dead is eternal, and death is simply another passage in the journey of the soul.